It's time to go pro. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. No, we're not talking about those overheating action cameras today. We're talking about the Gibson Les Paul Pro Deluxe. Let's learn about it. In 1969, the Gibson Les Paul Deluxe was birthed, 1 year after its reintroduction in 1968, after taking a small break through the 60s to become what we now consider the SG. You can check out this episode where we documented a first year 69 early example. But we transitioned from P90 pickups into mini humbuckers, and many greats like Pete Townsend to Scott Gorham, including Mike Ness, and many others brought the Deluxe to fame. However, from late 1975 into 1976, we transitioned into some new specs. We still have the mini humbuckers in the regular Deluxe, but we start to get the maple neck. It's a 3-piece maple neck. Prior to this, we were rocking 3 pieces of mahogany. At the same time of the introduction of the Deluxe is when the volute came around. It's also when you have like the pancake bodies, but those start to transition away. Starting in 76, well, at least the visible layer, but you'd still have the 3-piece maple top, and any Deluxe would look like this if you were to strip off the finish. So now enter our main review piece today, the Pro Deluxe. They offered this at, roughly a 10% premium price-wise. It varied year to year, but as you can see, this Pro model looks a little bit different. What makes it professional versus a regular Deluxe? Well, first things first, we go back to tradition. We've got P90 pickups. Well, that's kind of cool because these came in 4 main colors. We've got the ebony one like we're looking at today, as well as the ever popular tobacco sunburst. Those are your 2 most common colors you'll find on the market. However, there is a cherry sunburst. You don't see them too often, mainly because I doubt they made that many of them. And then the other one you don't find, because people tend to hold on to them, is the gold top version. So is it really just pickups that made them that more expensive? No, honestly, you gotta look close at the specs of your fretboard. So normally a Deluxe would have rosewood. However, the Pro Deluxe comes stock with ebony, so kind of like a Les Paul custom, but you don't have to step up to the full custom pricing. And to much lesser fanfare, instead of saying Deluxe, it says Pro, makes you feel good. There is also a ES335 Pro, but we'll talk about him another day. So those are your 2 big main differences that you can find that information online, but here's what you're only going to see on my show. The tuners are also upgraded. The Schaller M6 tuners, which we take for granted nowadays, was a very new thing at this point in time, and Gibson used it on their higher end models. The regular Deluxe kept using those kind of Kluson inspired ones for the next couple of years. Now, are there some variations in tuners along the way? Yes. However, the Pro Deluxe is consistently the Schaller M6. And not only were those things considered good back then, they have stood the test of time. And here's another difference about the Pro Deluxe. It got the speed knobs before the other Deluxe. So as far as knobs that got used, in the early 70s, the Customs would have the witch hat knobs, and the Deluxe would have the reflectors. However, then the Customs around 76 had the reflectors for a little bit too, but it's 1978 when you start to see that transition into the speed knobs, which is a return to 50s fashion. The Pro Deluxe got those even before then. When were these bad boys made? Maybe you've never even heard of this model. It's because they were just shortly lived in the mid-70s to the early 80s. The earliest documented serial numbers I've seen are decals and start with 99, which would signify late 1975 production. But by 1976, 100% these guitars were there. And you can find them as late as 1982, believe it or not. However, usually what shows up on the market are 77 to 79 examples. Production kind of drops off there. It's like the original Deluxe. It might have been produced from 69 till 1985 with some runoff, but after 1980 hits, things drop off significantly. Why is that, you might ask? Well, you gotta remember, the Les Paul Standard finally came back into production, around the same time that this thing came out. So those started to take over with their whole full humbuckers, and then we get like the Heritage series and reissues and whatnot taken off in the 80s. So the Deluxe models just kind of went to the wayside and still are kind of just a black sheep within Gibson's history. They have a very niche audience. However, nowadays people love the P90 guitars, so there is kind of a resurgence in popularity to these to a minor degree. But with having such a large span of dates, remember, I was just telling you, this is kind of transitional era stuff. Like this example still has a pancake body. Most of the Pro Deluxes won't have this visible layer. You can find this visible layer up until as late as 1979, but 76 is that transitional point where it starts to disappear. As far as your serial numbers, you can find the decals, and then you can also find your stamped-in serial styles. Again, all depends on the year. Most of them should be maple necks, but I suppose there is a very small chance one from around 75 could have the mahogany, but, you know, generally expect a 3-piece maple neck, 3-piece maple top under your finish. This thing just has tuxedo vibes written all over it. Just imagine if it had like a natural back. I think the reason they didn't do ebony tops is because you got the maple neck. It'll look weird. Case in point, this is an acquired taste on a Les Paul. Most people are just used to still seeing those mahogany necks matching with the mahogany body when you're talking gold tops. Well, one last fun story for you. The Pro Deluxe actually has a famous user. Neal Schon of Journey. His famous guitar that he routed for a Floyd Rose was a Pro Deluxe. And that thing just recently sold at auction for quite a lot of money. So that's about 85% of the story of the Les Paul Pro Deluxe. Let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to learn the last 15. Let's just say this thing cleaned up a lot nicer than I thought it was going to. Like when I unboxed it, I thought it was like, you know, maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10. But a cleaning and polishing job really did this thing wonders. So let's start with our pickups. Here's a really cool thing about late 70s P90s if you're curious if they're original or how to identify them if they're loose. They have these clear bobbins to them and you can see through to the copper color wiring. I've always found it quite fascinating. In the earlier 70s you can also find green wound ones. I would not blame you if you just wanted to leave the covers off because that's how cool it is, especially mixed with our golden binding. It gives it a unique characteristic, kind of like a 54 Les Paul Custom with a staple pickup. But the plastic used is very brittle. It's not uncommon to see this corner snapped off. It looks like somebody might have had to re-glue that one at some point. But there you can see the windings. You've got the big giant wooden spacers before you get to your magnets. Then you have a nice brass base plate and your regular 2-conductor shielded wiring. And the original foam pads, they're pretty much deteriorated at this point. So I'll go ahead and add different ones that'll help set height adjustments. But similar to a mini humbucker route, here's what we're looking at. If you only have a hole right here and there, that's how you know that P90s have been in. So vice versa, you could also tell if a regular Deluxe has been played with a little bit. They might be saying, Trogly, why aren't you talking about the nose of this guy? That's because this is not what you normally see when you open the cavity. There is a base plate screw. And this particular version only uses one screw secured in the center right there. And here's a look at our neck pickup cavity where you can see the short neck tenon construction. Is it possible to maybe find a transitional neck tenon if you have a 75 example? Maybe. But nearly all examples will have the short neck. But here's the backside of the neck pickup just for fun. And a look at its base plate. But here's a look at our pickup covers. Nothing too special, just nice and clean. And we have a UC452B branding on the inside. We've got like interesting tooling marks or something along the edges. That might help you identify one as original. But now we've got that all situated, let's go ahead and check out our pickup readings within the circuit. We've got the bridge at 8.18k ohms, neck position at 8.17, and the middle position for fun, 4.08. Now does Pro mean we have coil splits and all that? No, not yet. Gibson didn't start toying around with that until 1978 with the 50th anniversary Les Paul. But this model never had that regardless. And if it did, it would be like a little mini toggle switch here or there because Gibson didn't start to use like the push-push/push-pull pots until the late 80s. But here's look number 2 for this one. I think it looks pretty sweet without the pickguard on. As far as the condition goes, you can see the pickguard has left a ding on the top, so you'd have to live with that if you want to be a pickguard off kind of guy. And in unflattering light, you can definitely see some polishing swirls, picking scratches. But certainly nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. I would say the worst thing on the top is right over here. This is not a smudge. This will likely be a reaction to like suntan lotion, bug spray, maybe even just a personal skincare product. It just rubbed off from some guy's arm. And in the light, you can just see that slight haziness to it. I bet we'll see that under black light too. And we do have a ding in that area. So it's got some light nicks and dings, but it cleaned up phenomenally. But here's a quick look at our original pickguard. It's got some wear. I suppose if you want to be pickguard off, even after my polishings and stuff, you still have a little bit of a line right here from where it was resting against the finish. It's still just your regular volume tone for each pickup. Now let's look at the bridge and tail piece. I'm suspicious the thumb wheels have been replaced. That doesn't look like what they normally look like. However, was it possible there was a slight variant that I haven't seen and they only used it for like a year or something? Maybe. But the bridge itself is still the original Schaller made in Germany, as Gibson was using at this point in time. However, when we first unboxed it, the bridge was on upside down. So Nashville's, the screw head faces this way and it points towards the neck. ABR ones are the opposite. Screw head's this way, pointing towards the tailpiece. That's the historically correct way. Now, can you find ABR ones factory installed upside down in the 70s? Yep. Sure enough, you can, even in the 60s, but the historically correct way that most aficionados think in their head is what I just told you. As far as our tailpiece, everything looks stock here as well. As far as construction of this, it'll have a 3-piece maple top most likely. And as we saw earlier, this one still has the pancake body. You can definitely see the seam line, and there's like some minor lacquer chipping around it. However, this is far from a full separation. So just think of it more so as lacquer sinking at this point. But you do have a couple of dings along the edge here. But as I was telling you earlier, it's a transitional thing. So if you get a later 70s Pro Deluxe, you would not have the pancake body. But now our 3-piece maple neck and ebony fretboard. This one's looking pretty good after a fretboard conditioning and polish. Those frets came straight back to life, nice and shiny. But you've got your regular acrylic trapezoid inlays. It's not like the Pro model is like the Les Paul KM and got real mother of pearl or anything like that. It's just the ebony fretboard that made it special. Still a 24 3/4-inch scale length and 12-inch fretboard radius. Now let's check our specs. Sometimes they change stuff there. So 1.7 inches at the nut, about 2.04 by the 12th, 0.86 first fret neck depth, and 0.94 by the 10th, because by the 12th we start to hit the heel, and it's not actually that big. As you can see, it really starts to ramp up in that area, but it's best categorized as a 60s neck profile. And our binding has the typical fret sprout crack lines. Nothing to worry about though. So this one's in on consignment. You're probably really excited, ready to go to my website right now and purchase it. It's a great guitar. It really is, but there's something you need to know. Our truss rod is at what I consider limited adjustability, and it's very common when a truss rod is cranked down like this that the neck will start to twist. Now, by no means is this one a really bad twist. However, it's one of those, when you have string tension on it, it goes like this just a little bit, so it makes your action a little bit higher in the area that you would want it lower. Now, thankfully, we can compensate for that. The bridge, you just tilt it, and honestly, this one played just fine before I took it apart. And it looks to me that someone at some point in time knew that, because you can see that it looks like they were thinking the frets were all janky. Like, you don't have perfect crowns on all these frets. Somebody has, like, flattened them in certain areas. So I think that's why it probably plays okay right now, because somebody has kind of compensated for the twist when they didn't know exactly what they were working with. So if you want perfect fret crowns, you're probably going to need to level recrown at a minimum. Slightly twisted Norland era 3-piece necks are not all that uncommon. But overall, our headstock is looking pretty nice now. Got that great yellowed over lacquer. You've got your Les Paul model silkscreen. Are there some light nicks and dings? Sure. Scratches, but nothing too crazy. Here's a look at our special truss rod cover though. It reads Pro. And the back is also very yellow. So check out the cell phone video of how this guitar arrived to me. Oh boy, that back is really scratched up. I was worried about that. Now take a look at it. Most of that disappeared. Now, I'm not going to lie, you still have some of it. But the amount that didn't disappear is just a little bit in this area. Not quite as extreme as the entire back as when we had first unboxed this. However, sorry, I couldn't get this giant gouge out of the guitar, and there's still lots of nicks and dings. This is not a perfect example by any means. There's also a lot of strange rattling going on inside here. And what it was, somebody couldn't get these screws secured back, so it's just this. And usually the reason for why somebody doesn't fully secure it, it's because these holes have worn down, or sometimes they're just really hard to get. In this case, they just seem to not actually hold the screws. So here's what I suggest. Just tape these down and then stuff your cavity. You got pot codes of 53rd week of 1976. Completely perfect, untouched solder joints. And for fun, here's our toggle switch cavity. You can see through to the mahogany before it gets to the maple. I thought this was interesting. The output jack is plastic. I thought for sure we were into the metal ones by now, but maybe that was transitional at this point too. But now that we're along the other side of the body, you can see you've got some more pancake lines showing. And you've got our thick binding in the cutaway. And then you'll notice our strap buttons are a little bit lower than usual. I think it's because they don't want to drill it directly into the pancake body. Right here you can see what I'm talking about. They just sank it right above that pancake line. Then we've got a finish chip right there. But now we can move on to our neck. Not too much going on here, just a few light nicks and dings, some minor impressions in this area. A slightly deeper ding right here, like you can barely feel that one while you play. But this is always cool to see. It used to be very popular for shops to put their own little decal / sticker on the guitar if they were selling it. If you don't like that look, please don't remove it from the guitar. I get it, you want to make it look like how you see it in your head without store branding on it, but 9 times out of 10, this will have discolored the finish underneath it and you'll still see a sticker shadow. Now on an ebony finished one, you might be able to get away with it, but it's just a fun sign of the times. I personally just leave them alone. Here's a look at our premium Gibson-branded Schaller M6 style tuners. And this one's just branded as a deluxe. 06, I know it's confusing. You want to say 1976, but it's 1977 because 00 means 1976. But you can see we've got a small chip / rub through area right there. And a paint scuff mark from rubbing against the ceiling. But now it's time for that blacklight test. It's great to see a heavily aged clear coat under blacklight because it just glows so much. We haven't had one of these on the show in a while. So everything's looking good to me, but this helps show you some of those light nicks and dings as we were talking about, as well as that area down here where it reacted to something at some point in time. But those knobs are definitely vintage. Plastics are glowing the way I would expect to see. Headstock is 100% completely even. This is where you'd be able to tell if you actually have a real problem with your pancake body versus just lacquer sink. I would say we're in the clear on this one. As long as you don't see the finish like completely broken and like you can get your nail in there. It's very rare for a pancake to actually separate without like water or humidity damage. Basically what I'm saying is flood guitars. Got some lacquer rub in those areas. Obviously our dings, a little bit of sweat absorption. There's that ding I was talking about earlier. Looks like some strap rub. Up the back of the neck, everything is actually looking pretty good here. There's that ding I was talking about. And that just looks like that because of the shadows. Nothing to worry about here. And the backside of the headstock is also looking peachy. All said and done, 10 pounds, 6.5 ounces. So I was close. Let's go ahead, plug this one in, and hear how it sounds. That's the clean channel. It's distorting a lot. Maybe I should take some of that foam out to lower it. Let's try rolling the volume down a bit. Try the same on the bridge. For me, it's the bridge pickup that steals the show, and it blends great with that neck pickup. just for fun, let's do a quick comparison to that of mini humbuckers. I'll play similar things. Yeah, I think you can tell the brightness difference here. See, on this one, it's funny. I actually prefer the neck pickup and still like the combination between the two, but that bridge is just too bright. For your usual Gibson sound, anyway. So now we know all there is to know about the Gibson Pro Deluxe. So basically remember, it's got the P90 pickups, it's got the ebony fretboard, and it has the upgraded Schaller M6 tuners. That's what you need to know that makes this different from a regular Deluxe. Now, as we found in the playing demo, I personally really love the bridge pickup out of this. That is fantastic. The neck, could use a little bit more tweaking in my opinion. But if you're in the same boat that I am and love the mini humbucker in the neck of the regular Deluxe, just remember, it'll fit in one of these routes. You just might have to get a slightly different base plate. But then you could get the best of both worlds. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. This one is in on consignment, so if you're interested in the Pro Deluxe, you can find it for sale on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. This one's in my personal collection. But don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.